What up? I want to talk about the basketball version of Gumby, also known as Victor Wembanyama, the French phenom that everyone is starting to pay attention to. Well, I mean, people have been paying attention to him for probably at least 2 years now, but I think now we're getting to the point where you can't deny how great this guy is in terms of how unique of a player he is and how effective of a player he is, while also he's only 20 years old. And the question that I've been discussing with a couple of my friends and, other people in the comments and in my DMs and all that I think Victor Wembanyama can beat Derrick Rose's record of being the youngest league MVP in history. And after I've thought about it for a while, I don't even think it's that crazy of a take, because let's start with the logistics. When Derrick Rose won the MVP, he was 22 years old and like 180 or 190 days. So he was closer to turning 23 than he was to being 22 years old. Obviously, he had not turned 23 yet, though. But Wemby, that gives him an advantage because Wemby is 20. He just turned 20 in January. So if he wins the MVP this season for 2024-2025, or the season after 2025 to 2026, he will walk away with that record. Because if he wins this year, obviously he'll be 21 years old. If he wins the following year, he'll be 22 years old, same age as Derrick Rose, but he will be not closer to being 23. He will be closer to have just turned 22. So he will beat Derrick Rose out by a matter of days if he wins the MVP award in the 2025-2026 season. But I wouldn't be surprised if he won MVP this next year. I think it's more likely in 2025-26, but just looking at the season that he just had, I'm assuming he's going to improve, statistically, and his field goal percentage is going to go up. His three-point percentage is probably going to go up. And he's just going to have a better statistical outlook. And not to mention, the Spurs are a lot better than they were last year. You have Chris Paul now, so Wemby's going to get easy buckets from that. You have Harrison Barnes, another good vet to have on the roster. They drafted Stephon Castle. That's a great young player for them to pick up. I just think they're gonna be in a much better position this year, and I think Wemby's in a better position to produce even more this upcoming season than he was this past season. Because, like it or not, the Spurs were still awful, this past year. Like, they were not good. Wembanyama was their shining light, and they just weren't good. But despite all of that, he still averaged 21.4 points per game, 3.6 blocks, which is just nuts, 1.2 steals, almost 4 assists, 10.6 rebounds per game. He shot like 80% from the free throw line. It's like he doesn't have weaknesses at all, really. And, he just needs to bulk up. But if he bulks up, which I'm assuming he's already done a little bit, he looked a little bit more built in the Olympics. He's 7'4", so it's going to take time for him to really gain true muscle mass. But if he bulks up, he's going to go from averaging 10 rebounds a game to averaging 15 rebounds a game, like that. It's going to be so quick how much he's going to improve on the glass. And he played under 30 minutes a game this year. So imagine when he starts playing 35, 36, 38 minutes a game, he's going to be averaging like 30 and 15 easily in like 4 blocks. So if someone's averaging, let's just say he averages 26 points per game. I think that's a very, normal assumption to put him at for next year. I think he's going to have that big of a jump in terms of his point production. So let's say he averages 26 points per game, averages 12 or 13 rebounds a game, and 4 blocks, and a steal and a handful of assists. He is clearly the best player on that team. Clearly the best player on that team. And if you look at Jokic's stat line from this past year, he averaged fairly similar stats, except the assists are obviously in Jokic's favor, because he averaged I think 9 assists. He averaged, 9 exactly. 9 assists, 12.4 rebounds per game, 0.9 blocks, 1.4 steals, and 26.4 points per game. So I would personally take Wemby's stat line over Jokic's, or the projected stat line that I just gave of 26 points per game, 13-ish rebounds, handful of assists, let's say under 5, and then 4 blocks a game. I honestly feel like I would take 4 blocks a game over 9 assists. Because especially in the Spurs situation, Chris Paul is going to be having the ball in his hands a lot to set guys up to, capitalize on the plays that he's making. I honestly think, and if Wemby does put up that stat line and doesn't win MVP this next year, and then he improves on that stat line again and averages 29 a game and 15 rebounds, you got to give him the MVP. You got to give him the MVP at that point. And I feel like the MVP award is also, a lot of it is very subjective. So I think voters and the media are all about Victor Wembanyama, and they want this story to be huge. Wemby's clearly the highest touted prospect since LeBron James. And he, when he got into the league, he, made a point that was you guys, thought I was going to be this good. I am this good. And I would love to see him win MVP. I really would. I think it would be awesome if he won MVP this next season, because even though the Spurs are clearly not going to be title contenders, I think they have a chance to make the playoffs if they play to the best of their ability. And if they make the playoffs, I think Victor Wembanyama deserves the MVP award, because if they make the playoffs and they didn't have Victor Wembanyama, those two things do not exist without each other. The Spurs don't make the playoffs without Victor Wembanyama, and it's just, you're just not going to do it. You're just not going to do it. A team of Chris Paul, Harrison Barnes, and Stephon Castle is not making the playoffs. A team of Chris Paul, Harrison Barnes, Stephon Castle, and Victor Wembanyama can make the playoffs. But it's all about, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to continue to, get good draft picks? I mean, based on what they did in the draft this year, I don't really think they give a about draft picks on some level. They drafted Stephon Castle and then drafted Rob Dillingham 4 picks later, and then traded Rob Dillingham for picks in 2033. Whoever you're gonna pick with that pick is in kindergarten right now. You don't even know who's gonna be available, right? And so I feel like that was a sign to me that it's they don't care. They just want to develop the guys that they have, because they think Victor Wembanyama can be one of the greatest players of all time. And I don't blame them. And they have a great, front office. They have a great head coach who's been there for an eternity in Greg Popovich. And he's coached so many great talents, especially big men, over the years. So if anyone's in the position to become the youngest MVP in NBA history and beat Derrick Rose's record, it's Victor Wembanyama. And I personally don't think, regardless of how many good players are going to come into the league after him, like, I don't think Cooper Flagg's going to have that opportunity. I don't think, the guys after him that come in are going to have that opportunity, because it's a very, very difficult thing to do, because not only do you have to be the best player in the league, your team has got to be pretty good at least. Like, you're going to have to make the playoffs at bare minimum. And, to help your chances significantly, you should probably be a top 6 seed. So I think that's going to be the tough thing for the Spurs to do, is that obviously the talent's there for Wemby, and he can come away with that award. It's about if people are going to give him that award because his team is good enough. So it's going to be interesting. But do I think he can do it? I do. I really do. And I honestly think he is going to do it. And if it's not this year, I think it's going to be the next year. He's just that good. He's literally f***ing Gumby. Like, the guy blocks shots in his sleep. He was a rookie leading the league in blocks, like, by a big margin. Like, over a block a game was his lead on the next guy. Maybe it was a little less than that, but I think it was like at least a block a game. But man, I'm still mad that the Wizards lost that draft lottery. That was rough. But we got Bilal Coulibaly, so I think the French are doing something right here, because there's like something in the water over there or something. They got all these good basketball players that are jumping out the gym, crazy tall, skilled. Keep sending them to the NBA.